Hello, beautiful people. You are listening to the Communal Table podcast, part of Food and Wine Pro. I am your host, Kat Kinsman, and oh my golly. So our guest here today, I met him when I was in Austin for South by Southwest, and I think we met sort of in a back storage office area for a restaurant that was not yet open, and he showed me a thing we're going to be talking about mental health mise en place, and I was so just entranced by the way that he talked about self-care and working behind the bar and taking care of yourself while you're doing that and taking care of the people around you. So Paul Finn of Garage Bar and Commodore, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so make sure I got the laundry list of the places that what is your title for these places?
So for Garage Cocktail Bar in downtown Austin, I'm the general manager and beverage manager.
Oh, okay.
An occasional bartender. And for Commodore Restaurant in downtown Austin, I am the beverage manager.
And you just opened very recently.
Yeah, back in April. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And I've been hearing incredible buzz. So I was there before y'all opened. And I was actually doing a podcast that I think we'll probably release all of these together with Philip Spear.
Yes.
Who, we were having a pretty intense conversation about sobriety and working in the industry and the challenges behind that when you are working in an industry and a city that's very about party. Mm-hmm. And it's easy to get out of check. So you've developed, let's get into it. You developed this system. Can you tell us why you did this?
Yeah. So, as you mentioned, I've worked in bars and restaurants for a long time.
How old were you when you started?
I was 15 when I had my first busser job at a seafood restaurant in Leonardo, New Jersey.
Did you just know it was for you?
No.
You're just like, I need a job over there.
Yeah, it was a means to an end for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a musician as well, so for a while there
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so I was a traveling touring musician in a couple of bands for a while there, and working in a restaurant or a bar is a much easier way to, go on tour for a couple months, come back, and still have your job or get a new job. So for a long time, honestly, being in the industry was just, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the social aspect of it. I enjoyed the energy of it. But it really, for a long time, was a means to an end. So I could be a musician and tour and then work on records and stuff like that. At a certain point, like with many of us in the industry, it kind of just settled in. I really enjoy what I'm doing and I'm really good at it. And maybe this is my main career.
Yeah, and not just the side kind of thing. I mean, growing up, did you know that I think a lot of people don't necessarily, who don't know the industry, they think, you can be a chef as a career, and they don't know front of house for the beautiful profession that it is, where it's, some people go about it because it is a means to an end. Everybody needs a roof over their house, but it's a calling.
Mm-hmm. It is such a unique job. I mean, and I think a lot of what we do in restaurants, in the front of house in particular, is a lot of it's kind of invisible.
Yeah. The duck, the swan.
Yeah, right? So, it is a performance. That's why actors and musicians take to the job so well, because it is a performance, but to give a good performance, it has to be genuine, And this kind of leads into why I did start the mise en place thing. I was thinking about how working in the front of the house of a bar or restaurant was a lot like method acting, where you're acting, but it's coming from a genuine place. And the question became in my mind, so every day you have people come to work and maybe they're happy, maybe they're sad, maybe they're depressed, maybe their friend just died, maybe they just broke up with their significant other, a host of things. But once the curtains are open and the lights dim, you're on stage, right? So how do you get to that place you need to be?
Yes. So I've talked a lot with people in the beverage industry about this, because if you're a chef, you can be having a bad day and you can hide in the back and you can be cursing your head off and you can, so long as you get your job done. But when I started sort of talking to people about mental health, I was mostly focused on chefs and stuff. And then it wasn't until really I got to Tales of the Cocktail year before last that I realized that's the great tension in the industry, that difference between how you're feeling and who you have to be for everybody else. And that's exhausting, it seems.
Yes, indeed. And not only to the guests, but to each other, as a manager to your staff, as a bartender or server to the rest of your staff or your manager. There's a lot of layers to it, and you have to be able to function and do work that can be intense and complex. You have to be able to know history and be able to describe dishes and describe drinks. You need to make drinks quickly and accurately and make delicious drinks. You need to be creative on the spot, all with, a sense of ease and charisma. And you have to, they say, one of the things that struck me is like, they always say, like, don't bring your personal life to work.
But you're still a person.
But you do. I mean, what that really means is just kind of keep it to yourself. If you're not bringing your personal life to work, you're not bringing yourself to work.
Yeah. Yes.
So my thing was like, how do you allow yourself to be fully, genuinely who you are, but control it in a way that makes sense for the performance, for the job? And that was what's made me think of method acting, about how like that, you snap to, and you're that character, and you just, a method actor or an actor does not want to waste reels of film. They don't want to be the person on set that the lighting people are waiting on, and the director of photography is waiting on, and the other actors, right? They want to just nail their performance. So there's a lot of intensity and pressure to perform. And working in a restaurant or bar is the same, because the camera's always rolling. It doesn't cut away from you. So everything you do, whether it's you need to hydrate or use the bathroom or check in on your child, make sure they're okay, has to be done in such a way where you don't break that illusion of that. Like, I tell my staff all the time, the guests want to think we're superhuman. They don't want to think that we get sad or that we have to eat food, or that we might be hungry or hangry, or might have personal problems. And they shouldn't, because the thing is, when any guest that comes into a restaurant or bar is an opportunity for us to give compassion and hospitality to people.
You're feeding people in all the ways that means.
Yeah, exactly. The golden rule of hospitality is like, it's so important, especially in this day and age. There's so much stress in the world. So the bar or the restaurant becomes a safe haven, And so when they come in, I want the guests to feel safe and feel happy. And to do that, we can't let them be aware of our problems.
Yeah.
So how do we do that? Like, how do we do that? How do we control that? And what I came up with is that there needs to be structure to it.
Yes.
There needs to be training to it. And these are things you don't generally train for. I can train you to make a really good drink really fast. I can train you points of service and all that stuff. But training control of emotions and control of personality is something we don't really get.
It's heavy lifting, too. I think there is short shrift given to emotional labor. And I know people think, oh, that's a funny buzzword or whatever. No, having to be on, it saps your battery, and especially if you're somebody like me who's an ambivert, so I can be super extroverted, and then I need to go and plug in and charge my battery by being alone or just with my husband and or dogs, or with sort of people I've designated as sort of like safe, to do that for a while, because it takes a lot.
Yes, it does. It really does. And like I said, maybe. It's hard to push that down, and I just wanted to create a system to help, people, and specifically people in bars, restaurants, but really anyone in general, because, I love structure, I love charts, I love sheets, I love spreadsheets.
This
all that
is why you're a
stuff.
good GM.
So, and I love applying that stuff, to the bar and to the restaurant, and having charts for everything, and to exactly how much citrus to prep, so you don't waste any, and people love that too. They like structure, like being told what they need to do, so they just go in and they crush it in a short amount of time. So I wanted to apply a kind of a similar thing to what we're talking about, like emotional, mental wellness. So what I started, the sort of like light bulb moment was I think I was like maybe training like a new staff person on mise en place, and they're like, oh, I never even heard that word before. And so I explained the history of it, where it comes from and what it means, everything in its place and everything in its right place, and that it was a tradition within kitchens and mostly chefs, but now it's something you find very much in the front of the house, and especially bartenders. And I was saying how everything in your mise en place has a purpose, right?
Because you can't waste space. Kitchens and bars are tiny.
Right. You can't waste space. Things need to be fresh. So you don't want to have too much. You need mint. You don't want too much mint because it might go bad. And you don't, if you want, lemons, do you need lemon wedges and wheels? One or the other or both. But if you don't need it, you don't have it. Like, everything makes sense. Everything's perfect. It's always full. It's always beautiful. It's an extension of yourself, what your tools are, what's on the left, what's on the right, within reach, where your ice sits. Everything needs to be perfect, so that when you're busy, the muscle memory kicks in, and you don't need to think. When you reach your arm to the left, that's where my spoon is. When I reach my arm to the right, that's where my mixing glass is. When I reach down, this bottle's here and this bottle's there. I don't need to look at it. I just grab it. And that's how you can be very, very fast as a bartender. And it's accurate and consistent. And I was thinking how, like, I'm explaining mise en place, but in the back of my head, I'm thinking about other things because I know, like, you know, I was having some emotionally a bad day, and I know someone else on staff had something happen that was stressful. And I'm describing mise en place, and I'm thinking to myself, like, wouldn't it be great if we could apply mise en place to ourselves?
Yeah. Yeah. Here's my toolkit for being a person today.
Yeah. And I said to myself, well, let me think about that. What is in my mise en place, you know? And like a really sort of low-hanging fruit, for instance, is like at the time I was smoking, I've like wrestled on and off with smoking cigarettes for years and would go a long time without doing it. And then suddenly that day where it was just so stressful, I just needed to escape from the world. So I'd go and have a cigarette, which, you know, a large part of me does not want to do. And I know how bad it is for my body. But I started to look at it like kind of objectively and breaking it down and thinking like, well, it's not that clear cut. There are good and bad things to things we do. The important thing is, why am I doing it? Why are cigarettes in my mise en place? And I thought, to relieve stress. And then I thought, is it relieving my stress? No.
Because you're spending mental energy on beating yourself up about wanting a cigarette.
Right. So there's a price to be paid. And then I thought to myself, okay, if I remove that from my mise en place, what do I need to put in there to replace it? Because if you take something out, something has to replace it. It has to be a balance. So because otherwise there's nothing there to cope with the stress. And like just being in a bar, restaurant environment, what's 5 feet behind you? Delicious spirits.
Yeah.
You know?
Right there, arm's length.
Right there, arm's length.
And your body, you can know what it is without even having to look.
Yeah. And, you know, it depends on the bar and the time and place. But obviously, like, drinking in a bar while at work can be, you know, from the spectrum of not allowed ever, which is currently how my bar and restaurant is, to, you know, toast at midnight, you know, to give ourselves a, you know, little cheers, and to like, yeah, if you need to get through the shift by drinking, do it. Do what you need to do. Get through it, you know. I mean, I've even heard stories, not at a place I worked, of like when in a back house when the kitchen just got so busy, the chef would just bring out drugs and be like, do this really fast.
Whoa.
Get to it. We got to get through this.
Wow,
you know?
that's a human toll right there.
Yeah, and it's awful to think about that, like, these are things done for practical reasons, right?
Yeah.
Like, we need to get through this. We need to do a good job. We're so far in the weeds. We just need to do something to get us from point A to point B. And then at the end of the night, we can say we did a good job. And so the culture of restaurants and bars tends to gravitate in many ways towards that kind of spectrum of like, what do we need to cope to get through? This is a stressful job. It's hard. It's busy. I don't have healthcare insurance. I haven't been to a doctor in years. Like, I only go when I'm so far gone that I'm like injured or so sick that I need medication. You know, don't so much use preventative care because largely you don't get healthcare in restaurants and bars.
They do at your bar, right?
We do. So at Garage Bar and Commodore Restaurant, we do provide full healthcare benefits and a good package to our full-time employees.
And we'll unpack that in a bit.
Sure.
But I want to keep going on the mise en place.
Yeah. So it becomes, if you remove the easy coping mechanisms, the alcohol and the drugs.
It's like bringing something external into your body. That kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. So you've put it in your mise en place. So if you take it out, what are you putting there instead? I didn't have an answer for it. It took me months and months to come up with an answer. And the thing is, like, I started like making these little charts. Excuse me. And what I started doing was like, okay, I need to kind of like, this is not going to come to me easily. This is going to take time to develop. And one of the things that also kind of helped kickstart it was when last July, Damon from Grand Army and the Speakeasy podcast came into my bar, and I had never met him before. I knew who he was.
He's great.
He's such a great dude. And we just hit off so well, and we started talking about healthcare and hospitality and the things we're talking about right now, and just really like, you know, just had a great conversation about it. And that again sort of helped me sort of like formulate my thoughts. And he's like, well, you just come on the Speakeasy and we can talk about this stuff. And I was like, okay.
He's really articulate about it.
He's very articulate, and he's also very open.
Yeah.
And really open-minded, and
hugely. And
you know, being vulnerable within this industry is another thing that's not generally rewarded.
Do you feel like that's changing a little bit? I just, you know, my perspective on it has been, you know, I was always a cocktail fiend and from sort of late 90s onward. But then as a food journalist, I'd mostly been focused on chefs and stuff. So I'd fallen away from it just like a little bit. I think I also got turned off by kind of the douchery of some of it. It was driving me crazy. It's a facet of the industry that drives me kind of crazy. But when I got sort of re-involved with Tales of the Cocktail, because Caroline Rosen, who runs it, is a very dear friend, and I was able to go last year and this year and have sessions with people talking about mental health kind of stuff. But I saw this sort of shift in it when I went down there the previous year. It was not long after Anthony Bourdain's suicide and the death of John LeMaire, and and I know that not necessarily related or anything like that, but still like a loss in the industry. Yeah. And I saw sort of a deep split down the middle, like even just there at Tales. There were a lot of people who sort of had this moment of like, hey, whoa, let's stop and take a moment and process and figure out what we're going through. We're taking care of everybody else, let's take care of ourselves and each other. Yeah. And the rest of the people are like, ooh, party, but I felt like the conversation has shifted in a really meaningful way over the past, especially year. People die all the time.
Yes.
All the time.
Yeah.
And I can't even. I was counting at one point after Tony, and I know he and John were like within days of each other, I thought, or maybe even the same day or something like that. But like right then, I started counting at one point, and I lost count after like 2 dozen, and it's all different things from suicide to people drinking themselves to death to other kinds of things, and people don't have the mental health care. Yeah. They don't have the physical health care to get through any of this kind of stuff, and so I feel like it has to open up. But you're on the front lines there, and that people are not. There's still a big boundary.
Yeah. I think you're right. I think it has changed a lot. It's changing very drastically. I mean, I went to Tales this year. It was the first time I'd ever gone. I've been wanting to go for a long time.
I was so happy you were there.
I know.
When you came in, I was so glad.
I know. We just entered on the street. It's great. But I mean, there was wellness workshops, and there was yoga, and there was AA meetings, and so definitely.
I did Narcan training the year before.
Oh, that's great! Yeah,
they were doing bystander training and stuff, which was really tremendous. I know that that was a big ship to turn around Tales of the Cocktail because they had a lot of really ungood stuff and deaths and and abuse and all this kind of stuff. But in the past couple of years, they've really started putting. I think next year they're going to actually bring all the wellness stuff because it's right now in the New Orleans Athletic Club. Yeah. And, it's a few blocks away, but I think they're bringing it on premises next year, which is really great. So that's can do all that stuff. And
so don't make it any harder because people are already nervous about it,
Yeah, because it's scary to walk into a room and be vulnerable. Yeah. I mean, I had, the year before, I had 6 chairs set out. I didn't know if anybody was going to come or not. My husband was there with me, and I had a couple ringers in there because I had Abigail Gello and Souther Teague there as sort of ringers for me because they've been wonderful about this. We had 6 chairs, and I was like, whoever is going to show up, if 2 people show up, that's fine. We kept making the circle bigger till there were 26 chairs in that circle, and people were scared to walk in there, and some people walked in alone. Some people walked in, they're like, I'm bringing you. Come on. But they were talking, and it was really meaningful to me.
Yeah, it's special.
Yeah,
it's hard to do that. And the one we did this year,
I
walked in feeling kind of like, oh my God, I don't even know if I'm just gonna not say a word, I
was so happy that, and immediately you walk in, there's people who are working on different kind of projects and stuff, and people being really vulnerable about it, and holding hands and crying, and it meant a lot. It was a smaller group, but it was the group who I think really needed to be there.
Absolutely.
Except for that woman who kind of came in off the street. It was like trying to. We're all being like super emotional, and she's like bringing up something that has nothing to do with this.
She had anger, and that's what she needed to.
She had actually done that the year before too.
Okay.
That was not my first encounter with her.
Gotcha.
Yeah. But you're trying, so you have all this stuff and you're starting to come up with a system of like how this can work. You're thinking mise en place and thinking like what's in it for the day. So then how did this take shape for you?
So now, like, after meeting Damon and deciding I would go on the podcast and talk about it, I had a timetable. Yeah. Right. And that podcast ended up being more about healthcare, and that was fine because I gave myself like a deadline of I need to have this figured out by then. So I would talk about it, and I didn't. It took longer than that. And that's fine because it took the time needed, but it definitely had me thinking about it every day and working on it. And what I started doing was I started with making a list of everything I did in the day from the time I woke up to the time I went to bed. every day for several weeks. And
that's a real accountability thing.
Yeah.
There. That's amazing.
Really basic, simple stuff. It wasn't like progress or anything. It would just be like, woke up at, 8 a.m., brushed teeth, got ready between this time.
Do you write this longhand, or do you put it in your phone, or how do you do it?
I wrote it longhand.
Okay, I'm a longhand person myself.
I have bad handwriting too, so I can decipher a lot.
Same.
But what I started to see was patterns. And also the accountability thing was also a thing that struck me as like, okay, I don't want to write that I did this, but
you gotta do it.
I need to. But I started thinking of it as like, detach myself from it personally and just think of it almost like an anthropologist and just record the data. Take the emotion out of it, just record the data. Another thing I thought about was I'd gone to the doctor recently and I was having some back issues.
Mm-hmm. Professional hazard, definitely.
Yeah, and I was just convinced that I had I do have some legitimate back issues like some arthritis, but I was convinced like I'd seriously hurt my back.
Yeah,
because it hurt so bad, and I went to several doctors. I got X-rays, all that.
Back stuff is so debilitating. I've had to deal with that, and it just makes you think like, oh my God, is this how it's going to be the rest of my life?
Yeah, am I going to be in pain all the time? And the doctor, they did every test they could, and at the end of it, the doctor said, I can't find anything wrong with you. I think this is a manifestation of anxiety.
Wow.
And I did not like hearing that.
Yeah.
I wanted, a physiological answer to my question. I was already in therapy. I've been doing therapy for a couple of years. I didn't realize, I knew I had anxiety.
Yeah.
I know something I dealt with daily, but I did not realize that it could have such an intense physical manifestation.
Let's talk about that for a second,
Yeah.
because I, that I'm an anxiety person.
Yes.
And having to, when I wrote my book, I had to be really honest with myself about like, what are the manifestations of this? How has it changed throughout my life? And what are the things that I thought maybe attributed it to something else, and now I'm like, oh no, that was really anxiety the whole time.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, it was shaking hands, and my stomach was always really bad. And as I've gotten older, it's much more muscular. It's exhausting being an anxious person.
It is.
People have no idea like how, because at least for me, I clench everything. I clench my muscles. I clench my jaw. That's a bad one. Neck, back, and I lose sleep.
Yeah.
Anxiety hurts.
It really hurts.
And
It really
I
does.
pick my skin too.
Yeah.
And the inside of my mouth.
I bite the inside of my mouth. As a bartender, it's hard too, because like there's nights where I'm like, I can't even shake another drink. I'm so tense. My muscles are so tense and sore that like I'm done. Like I can't even shake more drinks, and I've got like 200 more to make. So
oh gosh.
So it can be debilitating, and when the work is so physical. So I went to the doctor and I didn't like his answer, but he was asking me questions like, when did this start? And I was like, 2 days, 2 months ago, 2 years ago. I don't know.
It's hard, yeah.
And every question he had, I had no answers for. So like I was not helpful to him as a patient. And so I started to realize like record that stuff. So I'd write like Tuesday, like back started hurting, headache, cut my finger, whatever. Like I was recording all that data and just seeing like patterns emerge, seeing where like, and then what I started doing, it was just kind of messy and didn't have a structure. And then I started separating it with like, you know what, I'm gonna have a daily intention and then list my days, and then it got a little simpler with what I was recording, because I found like you don't need to record everything,
Breathe 37 times.
Yeah, but still like it just was a little bit of a mess, and I was having a hard time organizing it. And this is kind of funny and nerdy, but I was cleaning out I was organizing my closet, and me and my wife just bought a house a couple years ago outside Austin.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's huge.
It is. And so like finally boxes I've carried around and moved. Like I've moved like so many times, so many
same.
states. I've lived in North Carolina, New Jersey, New York, New Jersey again, New York again. I've lived in Chicago, so Texas now. So I've been carrying boxes with me that I haven't opened in like 20 years.
Oh, my basement. Oh, God. We
Yeah.
moved into our place like 14 years ago, and it's stuff that I kind of crash landed there with. I haven't opened those boxes that whole time.
Yeah,
I dread
know.
it. I so dread it.
Oh,
And
yeah.
we rent, so someday we're not going to.
So now that I own, I was like, well, I can finally open those boxes. And of course, as you'd expect, there was a lot of embarrassing stuff in there, and there's some really cool stuff in there.
Terrible old poetry?
Lots. Lots
Yes.
of terrible poetry. But I found a box that was like all my old like Dungeons and Dragons stuff.
Oh, that's awesome.
And I was like, getting a kick out. So I was looking through it, and I have kids now. I'm like, well, maybe they'll like this. I'll hold on to this. They might like to play
What
this.
are your levels on various things? Are you chaotic? Like,
Yeah.
I think I'm probably like lawful good.
Yeah,
I want to be more outrageous than that, but I'm totally not.
I think I would be chaotic good.
Yeah, I think that works in hospitality. You
Yeah.
have to be slightly that.
the character record sheets. I don't know if you've ever seen those, but it's
Oh, yeah.
where you record what we're talking about,
yeah,
like
I know.
your hit points and your scores. And it's basically like a sheet for people who haven't seen it. It's like a two-sided sheet that like lists like all of your attributes as the character. Again, getting back to like role playing and being character, strength and dexterity and constitution.
Yeah.
And the history of what kind of things you've done. So I looked at that. I was like, this makes sense. This makes sense. Like this should be my format for making my mise en place sheet. Not the same, obviously, but it gave me like a jumping off point. Like, okay, I need like boxes and different, it kind of helped me sort of categorize like what the different things I was trying to record were. So like,
that's so smart. I love this.
I'll
we have a visual aid here. By the way, do you know the team from the Double Down in Las Vegas?
No.
They're hardcore D&D players.
Oh, cool.
And so they kind of have a league there.
Yeah,
I kind of
awesome.
want this like inter-bar like D&D league.
I know. I've been like talking about that with staff for years and never actually done it.
Oh my gosh. So if you go to Vegas, go to the bar, ask for Butters, and they'll see if it's a
That's
game
awesome.
day. They'll do like campaigns till Esther weekend. It's pretty cool. I have a friend who plays with them.
I love it. But it obviously.
Oh, hold it up to the camera if you don't. For people
sure.
who are watching this on camera, it's amazing. So if you want to explain it to people who are listening.
Personal mise en place, the date, vital information. It starts with the first category is sleep. And then there's a box. There's several boxes like for the length of sleep, the quality of sleep, dreams, that can be yes or no, and then just general notes. And that's just a way to say how many hours sleep did I get? Was it good quality? Did I have any dreams? If I did, were they notable? Do I remember anything? And then just general notes like, I slept on a couch, I slept in my bed, I slept, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
moved from the couch to the bed.
I woke up a lot,
God,
stuff like that.
yeah.
And then, so you kind of record that. And then the next category down is food. It's breakfast, lunch, dinner, snacks, and water. And you're just recording like what you had and when you had it. Sometimes you're going to see breakfast never checked.
Yeah.
Those things start to, see patterns.
Yeah, since I don't work at a breakfast website anymore, that is going checked less for me.
Yeah, no, I know. That's one and recording this and seeing breakfast missing week after week after week was like, I need to work on that, you know? Then you start seeing it pop up a little bit more to eventually it's like every day. So, and then the next category is physical exercise. So there's stretches, strength training, cardio, core, and other. And again, just to be able to keep track of what exercise you're doing, if any, what you need to work on. Next is mental exercise.
So what does that count as?
Mental exercise would be things like meditation, reading, and
This
learning.
is my second day of meditation.
That's awesome.
I just started yesterday.
Yeah,
it's all very new.
That's an exercise for your spirit, right?
Yeah.
Cardio, core, other. So a way to record these things. Mental exercise is meditation, reading, learning, conversations, planning, and then I have media under there. So like, did you watch TV?
Did I Netflix?
Did you listen to a podcast?
Did I watch the entire 2 seasons of Fleabag all in one go? I don't know, maybe.
Yeah.
Did I watch all 22 Marvel movies in a very short period of time? Maybe.
It's on paper now. Next is body systems. It's really things like basic vision, ENT, ears, nose, and throat, skin, hygiene. This comes in handy. So when I go to the doctor now,
yeah, you have all
like
the
when did this rash start? I'm like Thursday, August 17th.
So smart. And this is slightly to the side of this and only applicable to part of the audience. But I have a menstrual tracking app called Clue. But the great thing is, it's not just like, do you have your period or not? It's like, how do you feel this particular day?
Yeah.
What's your skin like?
Yes.
All of these things, and I find it so helpful to be able to just sort of track my own moods. And the great thing is, it actually has a thing that pops up says PMS is coming, and I was like, I know, bitch. Like it's,
and then you can prepare for it eventually, right?
And the funny thing is, you can actually have the data sent to a partner,
That's
they
amazing.
so they know what's going on, and I think that's great.
That's great. And the thing is, like anything like that helps us be more in tune with ourselves, because you know how it is. Like sometimes, like say your partner, like you might be really aware of behaviors that maybe he's not. And same thing. Like I rely on my wife sometimes to tell me, like, you know that you're doing this, or you're not doing that. Because sometimes we're just unaware of it. This helps be aware of these things.
That's so good, and to be able to share that.
And like, share, yeah.
Yeah, because my husband asked me the other day. I was feeling so cranky, and I actually was able to articulate it to him because we were highly articulate with each other. And I said, I'm being so cranky. I am so sorry. I just don't feel well. And he's like, okay, because he knows he can ask me this question and it's all right. He said, "Did you have your meds?" Because if you ask somebody, there's a cruel way to ask somebody
Yes.
that question. There was something on social media recently, and the guy was being disrespectful of his partner, sort of with it, taking your meds, but there's a kind way to do that, and he was great at that. And I said, I did. And he said, "Okay, have you had caffeine?" And I said, "I did also. I don't know what's going on here." And we were trying to sort of figure out what that was. But he knew that he knows my systems so well.
Right. Right. So
really...
it's like what you're reading right now is, you need caffeine, and here you go. I'll help you
Yeah.
with that. That's really cool. And like, what did you say at your seminar? You said something about most problems can be tracked to like hunger.
Oh, yeah. So there was a person in it, and there's a system that I think they use in recovery called HALT: hungry, angry, lonely, or tired.
Right.
And I think that's so good. And I've shared that with a bunch of people. So I don't want to say the name of who it was, but she knows who she is. And thank you for doing that, because I've been able to apply it. I had a friend who was spiraling recently, and I said, "Okay, here's the thing." And she was like, "Oh, I'm hungry and I'm lonely." I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
And some of these are solvable in a really kind of quick way. And that's
Yeah.
really good.
Yeah, 'cause sometimes it is a little simpler. It's not always complicated. So if you take care of like your basic life needs, and those are satisfied, like you said, like
Those
and there's
Snickers
something-
commercials.
Yeah, right. Snickers satisfies. Then
There's like,
sorry,
I'm
trying
a
to plug
monster.
Snickers.
Like I'm a monster when I haven't eaten it.
Yeah,
Like,
no, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think most people are. you know.
Yeah.
So you
Hangry's
talked
a great
about
word.
if you take care of all those things, there's still something wrong. Well, then,
Yeah.
then you need to keep asking questions and figure it out. So the last category on this page is I have input,
Oh,
which is
yeah.
things like vitamins, medications, caffeine, nicotine, alcohol, and natural remedies. Try to sort of cover all the non-food type items that we take
Yeah.
in. And that can be nothing to like a lot of things depending on the day or the person, right? So you get a lot of usable data out of that. So this front page is kind of just giving you like a daily map of your behaviors and the things you do in a given day and your intake and that sort of thing. The back page, want me to hold that up there?
Yeah.
It's more of like an output sort of thing. So it starts with intention. I like to do a daily intention, but also like a more long-term intention. Like
How do you set those, and what does that look like?
So, like, my intention for today would probably be like, get to the studio on time, don't make a fool of yourself.
You're doing great. You are doing great.
And then, like, my more long-term intention might be like, keep working on mental health, that sort of thing. So you don't necessarily always attend to the long-term things every day, but by writing it down, you're at least reminding yourself it's there.
I really like the daily thing, and I've gotten better about it over the course of the last year, because I realize if I don't have something, then I sort of spiral.
Yeah.
And that's really not a good thing. And Andrew Zimmern actually sort of like taught me to do this, to have, what is the thing for today? What is the daily thing to do?
Yeah.
And I'm still searching for what that thing is going to be.
Sure.
But at least if my intention is thinking about intention, but to have that tiny achievable goal. You know what? Actually, I do have. I have a thing on my phone that goes off every day at 2:30. It says stand and breathe.
Yeah.
And half the time I just sort of shut it off out of annoyance, but sometimes I am like, oh, okay, yeah, I have to stand and breathe at 2:30.
Right.
And it's a little thing. I know that I can do that.
Yeah, and the thing is, even when you don't, you still done something to remind yourself that it's an intention you have.
Yeah. And
So-
and I actually shared a couple of people on it too, so it pops up on their phone
Yeah.
as well. And I actually have one there but before the cafeteria closes here. It's to go down and remind myself to eat something.
Yeah.
Do I always? No, but at least I thought about it for a second.
And you're going to be more likely to do it more often if you're having little reminders like that. So,
Yeah.
So after intentions, there's a category for notable events, and that's just basically a lot of things happen in a day, and the things that kind of are notable that you want to remember when they happened and kind of how it made you feel is there. Then there's like a daily summary, from very unhappy to very happy, and that one at the end of the day, you check one of those boxes, and it's very tricky because you're like, well, I was happy in the morning, but I was unhappy later.
Yeah.
But you're just tracking the average, and it's hard to do that, but it makes you kind of focus in like, right, but what if I have to make a choice between one thing? Overall, how was my day? Overall, it was very unhappy or very happy. So you start to see the boxes move up and down and how they relate to things that happen. And then you give yourself a summary rating, a 1 to 10 scale on your efficiency, work-life balance, goals, and self-actualization. Efficiency is like, did I get all my to-do list stuff
Mm-hmm.
done? You know, work-life balance is like, did I get my work done, but I also leave time for my personal life and my family life? Did I keep it in balance, or did I just focus on one or the other fully?
Mm-hmm.
Which can be okay, depending. And then goals, like the intentions I set, how close did I get to achieving them?
Mm-hmm.
And then lastly, which is I think the most important one, is self-actualization.
Yes. What is that?
So that's like, I try to term things as like non-spiritual and religious as possible, because I think the more you can make things more about data and information, the more approachable it is for a wide range of people,
Mm-hmm.
and you don't sort of rub people the wrong way with like trying to help people with mental health, but then injecting your own kind of beliefs into it can be tricky. So I try to avoid that altogether. But self-actualization is one where it's like, how much did you achieve being who you are in that day? Like, how much did you get to really be the person you wanted to be, your true self, you know? And that can range really widely. And it's a way just to remind ourselves to, like, at the end of the day, it's all you have to do is just be your genuine self. You know, you don't have to be anybody else. So seeing all the stuff is cool, because, like, we focus so much on our failures and mistakes and the things we did not accomplish, that this doesn't have you list what you didn't do. It has list what you did do.
I think that's so helpful, because
Yeah.
I'm a person with a brain. I can beat myself up at the end of the day. You know, I didn't get this and this and this and this accomplished.
Yeah.
And again, I've gotten better about this, because I have this mental accountant who's saying, well, you don't deserve to sleep because you didn't do X and X and X and X. And I've gotten much better as I've gotten older, as I, went back on medication and as I got a diagnosis of ADHD, that, okay, it was okay. You get another reset tomorrow, unless there's something that is definitively will screw up somebody else's day. If this thing doesn't happen, if this will cause harm to somebody else, if I don't take care of this thing today, most of the stuff can happen next day. I might get up early, I might do whatever. So I'm a little bit better about saying, like, I can't sleep. I haven't earned sleep. I haven't done enough today to earn my place, in the universe.
Right.
And realizing, like, it doesn't actually work that way.
It doesn't. And the thing is, like, I think that's a very common, like what you're talking about. I have those same thoughts. I know a lot of people do. It's like the self-punishment thing and beating ourselves up. And what you start to realize, though, is that when you treat yourself like that, you're affecting the people around you.
Yeah.
You know, because then if you're feeling that way or you're in a bad mood, you can't give your genuine self to the people you care about.
Yeah.
And then that just, again, sends negative things back and forth and just makes it harder and harder to get to where you need to be. So by tracking our achievements and the things that went right, it's a little way to remind ourselves to, like, take it easy on ourselves a little bit, not beat ourselves up for the things we didn't do. And to be able to say, like, because it's so easy to forget the things you do actually do. It's like you accomplish something and you move on, and you instantly forget about it, and you think about 10 things on your list, you know?
You have to give yourself credit for those little wins.
Totally. I really believe that, because, and not in a way to, like, self-congratulatory, it's just a way to be, like, healthy in mind, body, and spirit, you know? Because you're going to be a more efficient and a more compassionate person if you're compassionate to yourself.
And learning self-compassion is so hard, and depending on how we were raised, like, so many of us were not raised with a good vocabulary for this kind of stuff. And if you're in hospitality, you're taking care of everybody else, and you come last. But I just this is still fresh in my mind, because we just recorded this the other day, but I just did a talk with Sean Brock at Blackberry Farm, and he was talking about, his recovery and self-compassion, and he had kind of a graph. Y'all should be you should be friends. You both have the binders for this, because when he was coming out of rehab and he had to come up with a care plan, he made this binder of it, but he came up with this method where he was trying to figure out sort of the radius of his care that he could give, and he couldn't tend to the things out here if he wasn't getting to his tiniest unit. Like, he was talking about it as units of community, which I thought was really brilliant. He's like, my smallest unit of community is myself, but then his wife and his little baby. And he's like, if they're not sort of taken care of, I'm not solid with them, I can't go out to the next thing, which is the managers, and then and the guests and all this kind of stuff. And I thought that was really a really great way to look at that.
That's very smart. It's like you're taking care of your own house before you're expanding that sphere, and that's a good point, because and I think that, again, like, the hospitality thing starts with yourself. Like, if you're not good to yourself, if you're not treating yourself well, if your mise en place isn't in shape, then how can you truly treat other people well? because then if you can't treat yourself well, you can't really treat other people well because it is an act. So by starting with ourselves and treating ourselves well, having compassion for ourselves, then it's easy to be genuine with other people, the people around us, and take care of them. Because then if you're taking care of other people while not taking care of yourself, then there's a little bit of a resentment built in there.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's one of those, I mean, I always quote the sort of airplane thing, put your own mask on before helping others, because I mean, you have to plenish, that part of yourself. But I absolutely get the resentment, like, everybody else is happy. Why don't I get to be? And then you engage in sort of bad behaviors of this. There's also the thing, there was sort of the push-pull recently with RuPaul and Lizzo, because, and the RuPaul's thing is like, if you love yourself, you can love everybody else. But, Lizzo says, like, if you love me, you can love yourself. And, and I think both of those are kind of valid. But it's sometimes if you have a brain that is used to taking care of other people, you're so focused on taking everybody else and not yourself. And it's a big job to take care of yourself.
It is. It really is.
It's daily work.
It's daily work, and it's important work. And this side of the sheet, it also was inspired by my therapist, because when we go, I was doing therapy every week, and she'd always track this kind of stuff, like, how was your day overall? How was your week overall? What are your intentions for this week? So that influences part of it, because I always think about that. Like, it's like intention and attention, and if you're taking care of those two things, then you're living a life that is worth examining, and it makes it easier to function and to deal with the stresses we deal with, and also like it's important, I think, in the industry in particular, but to the world in general, to like help demystify mental health. In particular, like, I know we were talking earlier about suicide, and about a year ago I had a pretty good friend who's a bartender, hadn't seen him in a long time, and he died by suicide.
I'm so sorry.
More recently, we lost David Berman, great artist, great lyricist, great songwriter.
I think, actually one of my colleagues just got a tattoo in memoriam of him. And that's
that one hurt. That was a hard one. And he in reading the stuff the interviews he was doing before he died, he talked a lot about treatment resistance. I'd never heard that term before, but it makes so much sense. I know so many people who are treatment resistant. I was treatment resistant for a long time, where it's like part of you doesn't want to get better,
I so understand that, because you become comfortable in your discomfort, because then there's the responsibility of being well, and if you don't know if you can achieve that, it can be there's a lot of pressure and work, and you know who you are as a depressed person or an anxious person or a person with relationships to substances or whatever. You know who you are as that person. Yeah. And sometimes you can be in a community that reinforces you in that role. So who are you going to be if you're not that person?
It's true. And I think I have a saying that helped me kind of formulate all this stuff, which is that we often walk around with an attitude of illness. Yeah. Where, when I was going to the doctor for my back, in my mind, I'm like, it's got to be cancer. That's what it's gonna be. And jumping to that instead of the easier solution, which was it's anxiety. So you can throw a lot of effort at trying to self-diagnose your cancer and trying to go down that treatment path, which is not what's happening.
I thought I was having an aneurysm last night, because I was like, oh, my head hurts. Oh, clearly I'm having a stroke or something like that.
Like self-diagnosis is really bad for us, because we have this attitude of illness. We just expect to be sick. And part of that is like kind of thinking we don't deserve to be healthy.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then we find out we're healthy. It's like we resent that. And you hear it from doctors, and you're like, no, that can't be right. That can't be right. Yeah. No, I'm ill. There's something wrong with me. It's like, well, there is, but it's a mental attitude, and address that, because there's no shame in that.
Yeah, and it is just as valid. Like, it's like, I hate it's all in your head. Like, yeah, it is, which it's still very present for me, and it's affecting my body, and it's not, it's people like to diminish other people's mental health things, and I honestly think that comes from a place of either fear or ignorance. Yeah. But it's very, very valid. Even if it is like, quote unquote, all in your head, it's still real. Your body hurts just as much.
It's true. And our minds can make our body hurt. So I think part of that is it's easier. There's less of a feeling of guilt and shame to say, like, I have a broken arm. If it's physiological, it's easy to address. But there's something about if it's a mental illness that we are really uncomfortable with as a culture.
Yeah.
And have a hard time talking to like the people closest to us, let alone like a therapist or a coworker or
So
something.
you don't want to you don't want to burden them. You don't want to worry
Right.
them. And then also saying things out loud is really, really difficult.
Really difficult. My therapist, we worked on like giving names to things. Because it's really scary to do that. And like when you put a name to something, like it's like you have to acknowledge it's real.
Yeah.
And it's like really terrifying. But then by doing that, you've made the step towards resolving it, you know?
I think that, I mean, and can we talk about naming for a second? Because when I was a kid and I was had my first, like, actually second, we didn't, the first time I had a sort of serious depression, they thought it was mono. And then I got, mono again, like my freshman year of high school. I was being bullied. I was dealing with depression. It was a sort of all of this thing. And they did every test on earth. They thought I had cancer. They thought I had all these things. And it came back, well, no, it's probably, let's, send her to see a therapist, get medication and stuff. My mother and who, deals with a lot of mental illness herself, it was making her come to terms with things about herself, I think. But we came up with a word for, we didn't, depressed sounds so, whatever it happens to be. We came up with the word gricky, which is a combination of gray and icky. And it was this manifestation of this, I always felt like there was this gray cloud weighing me down. And, and we could say like, oh, do you feel gricky today? Do you, whatever
fantastic.
that is. So when you talk about naming the things, what are you talking about when you're saying that?
Well, it can be things like that. Like even having like a little bit of a private language between yourself and the people close to you.
Yes.
Can communicate a lot in a short amount of time.
Bad brain day is what I use a lot with people.
And it helps because then what ends up happening a lot of time is like if we're in a certain state, like being gricky or something like that, and the people around us are confused, they don't know what's going on, and people tend to take things on themselves. So
absolutely,
if you're feeling that way, I might be like, oh, I've done something wrong.
Oh, yeah.
And then it creates miscommunication and misunderstandings and arguments that are kind of unnecessary. So like by naming things like that, it allows us sort of like move quickly through and kind of set boundaries and parameters to how to interact. Like, okay, well, if you're feeling gricky today, I'm not gonna bring up this subject. Then we'll be focused on more positive things. And there's that. And then also just in therapy, like when you're in therapy and you're uncovering like trauma and stuff like that. It can be really hard to talk about the stuff and put names to it. It can be terrifying. I think a lot of people, myself included, just don't want to give names to those things because it's scary.
Yeah.
But you find that like when you give names to them, you're kind of taking your power back over those things. And,
oh, absolutely. Like a diagnosis, if that is part of it, is such a great thing because then you have a treatment plan.
Exactly.
And
exactly a treatment plan. And then you're less treatment resistant.
Yeah. So let's talk about the pin that you brought with you because sometimes you don't have the words and you don't want to have to say something. So it's a shorthand. It's so funny. I met these people. I'd been thinking I wanted to talk to them, and then they happened to walk into a room that I was in. And explain the pin project, if you will.
Yeah. So I found out about this at your seminar at Tails this year, and it's a project by Mark and Dee Dee out of San Francisco, and they are both, career bartenders who at a certain point had to stop drinking alcohol, but still, like many people in the industry, still want to be bartenders and be professionals in the industry. But what can be hard as a bartender who's not drinking maybe that night, maybe forever, is there is a lot of pressure within the community sometimes not on purpose, but, if you go into another bar, like a good example is like, I remember one time going into like the bar down the street because I needed to borrow like lemons or something, and you walk in the door and already a shot's put on the table for you because they see you walking in. It's like, whoa, I wasn't trying to do that, but now I feel like
you have to.
I'm being antisocial, or I'm being inhospitable if I don't take this gift, because bartenders giving shots to each other can be a really nice gesture.
And there's the boomerang.
The boomerang, the bartender's handshake, all stuff. Those are traditions that can be very positive and very good, and it gives a sense of community. But if on a given day you're like, I don't want to drink today. Like I'm taking a break from this.
Yeah.
It's hard to talk about. So the idea is you would put the pin on your shirt.
And for people who can't see it, it sort of looks like a no sign, like in the circle with the slash through, but the slash is very long and it's sort of subtle. It's a good looking pin. You could easily wear it. I have a different sort of version of it. Like it's like, I think it's more silver or something like that. I think maybe they do different versions. It's something you could absolutely wear on your clothing. And if you don't know, you don't know.
Yeah.
So it's nothing like
And if you don't know, it becomes a conversation piece.
Yeah.
And I try to train my bartenders to know what it is, and whenever I go around to different bars, I try to bring it up if it organically, it's just a really great, like you said, it's a silent communication, so that like if I see that now, I know exactly what to do. Like they don't want to talk about it, so I'll make them like
a seltzer,
seltzer water, and not make a big deal out of it. And so it's what I like about it too is that there's a spectrum, I think, of behavior. So like to either be a drinker or to be in recovery are can be very extreme ends of the spectrum, right? But there is also a whole place in between for a lot of us, like as bartenders and front of house workers and back house workers too. It's like there may be just times you need to drink because you're doing menu design, stuff like that, and other times when you're not trying to. So trying to navigate that can be really tricky. It can be really hard, if you set goals like I'm not drinking for a month, that can be really hard to maintain working in the industry.
Yeah.
So any little thing to help, I think, is really positive. I think it's fantastic that they did this pin.
And I'm a person who, goes in and out of drinking, and it's usually because, physical stuff, beyond, I have this treatment resistant gut thing. And honestly, and so I have to periodically go on these like awful bomb rounds of like gut medication, and I will not be drinking then. But, we have bits and bubs as we call, my friends and I call it. I think at Bon Appetit, I have to give them the credit. They called it bubs and bits or something, and somehow I misinterpreted that as bits and bubs. But it's seltzer and bitters, and it's a really nice thing. And I wrote about it at some point a couple of years ago, and it turns out like it's this like shibboleth kind of thing where if somebody orders a seltzer and bitters at a bar. A lot of bartenders are clued into what that means, that you're just not drinking that night. And the great thing about it is if you feel like you have to do this thing to fit in, like it looks like you're drinking something because there's probably a lime wedge and it's got a slight bit of color to it.
Yeah.
And it's, and then you don't have to have that. I mean, it's nobody's business why anybody else isn't drinking. If they're pregnant, if they're on medication, if they're sober, it's whatever.
Yeah.
So where can people get this pin?
They have a website, www.thep.in.
And we'll have this in the show notes as well.
I ordered it from there. I ordered a bunch to have on hand for my staff if they want to borrow them, like kind of borrow them like their library books, or even to give out to guests if they ask about them.
Yeah.
So you can get on their website and they'll ship it to you. It was funded by the Tales of the Cocktail grant. So
I think that's awesome.
Now that leads into where I see my personal music going.
Okay. So personally, I was going to say, copyright it right this second, because like this is something that really I think could be an industry game changer, and at the same time, I want you to get lots of money for it. So whatever I see like an app or something like that, but I like it's something like because I honestly think. You're giving people a toolbox.
Yeah, and what's cool, like, so my wife, when I was working on this for a long time, and she was like, what is this? Like, what are you even doing? Like, not like, just like, not in a constructive way, but it's kind of like, I don't, like, explain it, help me understand. And when I finally did my seminar at San Antonio Cocktail Conference, and she was there, and she was really supportive, and she was like, oh my God, and like, afterwards.
Is she in the industry?
No, she's not in the industry. She was a baker, a professional baker for a while, but has been out of the industry for a while. But after I did it, she was like, okay, I have so many questions, I have so many ideas, and gave me really good constructive feedback. And like part of it, you start to see how like things manifest from your own personality, right?
Yeah.
So for me, like I like writing longhand and having journals, but not everyone does like that. And my wife was like, first of all, you need a PowerPoint presentation. So she made me one, and it's fantastic.
Oh, amazing! Do you need an app for it?
And she's like, you need an app because most people don't want to carry this around with them. They want to do it in their phone. And I was like, I didn't even think of that. I'm like, that's so true. So I do want to do an app out of it. The cool thing about, I think, what an app could do for as well is that you could do charts where when you enter this information, you actually could do little reports and track. Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing I love about this period app is because it says over time, like, here's all this stuff.
Yeah. Like, so it can tell you exactly, like, how many drinks you've had in a month and how much of your goals you've achieved in a month and that sort of thing. So I'm really excited about that.
Is this copyright? Please copyright this. Like right this second to that, because you've really put so much labor into this, and it's I see this in it puts my brain at ease looking at it, like just fitting into the system. And it's, is there a website where people can get this?
No, this is okay. This is right now. This is all very word of mouth.
Yeah, it's so good.
And partially by design. I'm not trying to rush it out into the world.
Yeah.
I've done a couple seminars. I'll do staff trainings at bars, restaurants.
I want you to get paid to go and speak about it.
I'm not even thinking about that right now because I just want to be a resource to the community because like there are a lot of cool people doing really cool things and trying to be positive and add positive things to the industry and to the world. And I want to do the same. I think it's actually going to work for anybody too. Like I designed it as an industry thing, but I started to realize, again, my wife looks like, yeah, like this could apply to me too. I don't need to be in the industry. So that's kind of cool. But yeah, right now I just want to sort of like, I'm still taking my time with it. It's been it's a work in progress still. And part of it, talking about it like here today, is another part of me sort of just seeing what people need and want out of something like this, and so I can further refine it,
I mean, it's been on my mind since you showed it to me back in, was that May? That was a while back.
No, it was during South by Southwest, so it was March.
Oh gosh, that feels so long and short ago.
I know.
I was in the middle of crazy travel right then as well. So oh my gosh, because I was going from there to Philly to, I forget where I was going after that, and just trying to sort of keep myself in check during that kind of time. And
well, it's cool because you were interviewing Chef Philip Spear.
Yeah, so I have podcasts with him and one with Callie, and I think we'll probably put this all out at the same time. So talk about the new place and what you have done to take care of people there, and then and what about the Run project.
Oh yes. So William Ball is the owner of both Garage and Commodore. Chef Phil Spear is a part owner of Commodore and has been integral with Garage development as well. They're both very much into wellness and mental health, and again, like provide health care for all staff, which is fantastic.
That is unheard of, and it should be very much more heard of. And I think it'll be really valuable for people to know that it can be done.
Well, yeah, just to talk about that for a minute, I just did Bar Methods this week. Which is a fantastic annual project. It's similar to like a Bar Smarts type of thing, but it's a little bit, it's different. It's really great. Christopher Bidmead is the guy behind that, and it was fantastic. And they take 50 bartenders from all over, and I met a woman who's a bartender. She's pregnant, and I thought about that because I think about that myself. It's like in the industry, because we're bartenders or servers or work in restaurants or bars, like those situations become very difficult. Like if you don't have health care, if you don't have time off, like if you're a bartender and you're pregnant and you take 3 months off, it just means you don't make money.
Yeah.
So that can be really challenging. And that kind of plays into why I think healthcare should just be a standard thing for bars and restaurants. I don't think it should be like, we don't deserve that just because of the nature of our work. If anything, we need it more than a lot of industries.
It's baffling to me. Like, I know economics are deeply challenging and stuff, but it's just the humane thing to do.
Well, the way I look at it, the way we look at it is like, it's another expense, like we spend X amount of thousands of dollars a year fixing our refrigerators and our cold draft machines and all that stuff. Like, we should also spend that money to do preventive maintenance for our humans.
And I mean, people break. And imagine this is really good for drawing people to work for you and staff retention.
Absolutely.
I'm sure that's got to be, because it's expensive to train somebody new.
It is, and it's you invest a lot of time and money into people, and like I have a wonderful staff. I love y'all, and a lot of them have been there 2-3 years, and like in this industry, that can be really difficult to hold on to people.
Yeah, and especially a town like yours where there's a million places to work.
Oh yeah, absolutely, and they stay with us, they grow with us as the company grows. We have more restaurants and bars. They'll be our future managers and leaders, so it's really really nice to be able to sort of nurture that sort of culture. And so culture is really important to those guys, William and Philip, and those guys are both in recovery. They do a lot of healthy practices like yoga and running. So Philip started the Run Club for the restaurant for Commodore, and it's open to really anybody, but it's specifically a lot of the Commodore staff and some of the Garage staff, they run together 3 times a week, like Monday, I think it's Monday, Wednesday, and Friday.
What time of day?
At 10 o'clock.
And night or morning?
Morning.
Okay.
Sorry.
But no, because I know people, like I was just with a friend of mine, and he had I think he worked a double, got home, went to the gym because he needed to burn that off. Yeah,
no, totally. That makes a lot of sense. Right now they're doing the morning. I think they see it as like a way to sort of jumpstart your day. And Philip is really active in running, and he's done marathons, and it's part of his lifestyle. He does every day, and that's been really great for him, and his health. But he makes it really clear to everybody, it's like, this isn't a race. This isn't about who's great at running. Like, if you've never run before, if you can barely run, like, you're welcome to come with us. If you fall behind, we'll wait for you. I'll jog next to you. And tries to make it really approachable. Because, like, I know for myself personally, like, he's like, you coming to running tomorrow? And I'm like, maybe, you know, because it makes me like uncomfortable because I've never been a runner.
Yeah,
but he's
same.
he's so like welcoming with it, and I know I'll do it eventually. It's just I'm working through my own insecurities, you know?
I absolutely know. Like, I know that I need to like go to yoga or something, but it's just the notion of, because I know people are really competitive about it and stuff. So I used to go to a gym, and the class that I would go to yoga, and it was like old, like firefighters with injuries and cops with sciatica. And
I mean, that's the thing. It's like in really physical industries, it's even more important that we take care of ourselves and our bodies. And like for me, like I try to do a fair amount of stretching every single morning. I encourage my bartenders to do that. Like we were talking about at Bar Methods, it's like if you don't stretch before your shift, like 10 drinks in, shaking, you're going to be like,
screwed.
My God, you're going to be on fire. So it's really important to stretch every day. I try to exercise several times a week. I haven't gotten towards, I do an exercise bike.
I like it.
The comfort of my own home, you know?
Yeah, and I can listen to whatever I need to on that. For some reason, I listen to a lot of Kanye. on the bike. I don't know why that's Kanye and Johnny Marr.
Yeah, I listen to podcasts a lot while I'm doing it. You know, I think that's the thing too. Is like, what can be a little bit difficult, like as we're sort of trying to bring different worlds together, because like I still grew up mentality from high school of like there was the jocks and the punks.
Yeah,
and I was definitely one of the punks. I wasn't one of the jocks. You know.
Yeah.
So. But unfortunately, when you choose that lifestyle and that culture, you generally are kind of eschewing like physical exercise and that sort of thing because
I feel like punks are getting healthy now.
Yeah, exactly.
Everybody's like straight edge and
you know, you don't like take off your leather jacket and put on like exercise clothes and go to the gym. Like a lot of us don't.
Have you seen the goth health goth?
No.
It's amazing. And I actually have like a health goth playlist.
Wow.
I did not put it together. It's a thing that exists in the world. It's like industrial music that you can work out to.
That's so cool. So our ways of like finding our comfort level. Because the thing is like a lot of times different cultures of that can be like off-putting to people if you don't follow like the cookie cutter way to do it.
Yeah.
And it's like, so I think it's important for us all to find our own comfort level with that. And if you're like, well, I want to run, but honestly, I don't want to like wear like running clothes. I just want to like.
Oh yeah, you just have to find the.
You have to find your way with it. You know, your comfort level.
Oh, I'm like all black clothes and like band T-shirt or whatever that thing happens to be, or I buy all the Halloween Halloween stuff at Target because they have really good stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. You still have to feel like you. You're right. You have to feel like you.
Yes.
When you're taking care of yourself.
You have to retain your individuality while being part of the group. You know.
I'm never gonna be Gwyneth. I'm never gonna be. And I psych myself out of it thinking I'm like, oh, wellness and stuff, it's not for me. But I just had this, fairly transformative time at Blackberry Farm where I wasn't even doing any of like the wellness stuff, but I was around a culture of it that didn't feel douchey to me. And I really appreciated that.
No, I appreciate that too. And I think that's kind of cool that like things are changing a lot.
Yeah.
And cultures are interlapping and transforming.
Yeah.
And I think it's okay. I think that's healthy for all of us to kind of just be open with who we are and what we do and how we perceive things, so we can kind of like collectively change things, If it's okay, can I double back on something we touched on earlier?
Please.
Because we started to talk a little bit about suicide. And,
let's talk about it.
A couple things.
I'm going to shout out one thing real quick.
Oh, yeah.
Crisis text line is 741-741. You just text them. It's available 24/7. And whatever you're going through, they have heard it before. And the volunteers, I used to be a volunteer. I'm currently in retirement from that. But like they give a damn. Doesn't matter where you are. You just text that. You can do it via Facebook Messenger and not sure about via Twitter, but yeah, it's an amazing thing. So whenever we talk about suicide, I just like to shout that out
Absolutely.
first.
And thank you for doing that. I'm obviously not a therapist, and I'm not trying to give advice out, but I was talking to a friend last night, and we were kind of reliving what happened with our friend last year who died by suicide, and there was still a lot of anger on my friend's side, and he just still hadn't come to terms with it yet. And when we talked earlier about how with mental health in general, there's a lot of anger and shame and stigma attached to it. Then you add suicide into that, it's even way worse.
Absolutely. People won't talk about there are people who that was the thing, and a lot of times it's the family doesn't want to say So
as a culture, I think if we allow that dialogue to be more open and be prepared to hear hard things and like not judge people, like if your friend is in danger of that, but you have like an attitude of like being angry about it or adding shame or guilt to it, like they're not going to talk to you about it.
Yeah.
So you have to sort of like forget your own feelings and emotions about it and let yourself be open to hearing the conversation, and then try to help and do what you can. But if we want these great people, these wonderful human beings who are dying by suicide, and it's important to use that term.
I agree.
Suicide.
Yes, I agree with that, because that puts the blame on somebody, and it used to be like sort of a legal kind of thing.
Yeah.
commit.
It makes it like a sin, a crime.
Yeah.
It makes it shameful. They died by suicide in the same way that you don't say someone committed cancer.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I agree
you
with
don't
you.
say someone committed being hit by a car. So we need to think about our language and how we view these things, because when we
And
say
you
those
can also
terms,
say killed themselves. Like just in my crisis counselor training, you can say took their life, killed themselves, you know, whatever it is also, because it's what happened.
it's what happened, sure. I'm certainly not trying to like, you know,
This is important. No, this is absolutely important. I'm glad. And I was hearing you saying died by suicide. I was like, yep. I was grateful you were using those words.
and, you know, like, I don't have any anger towards my friends who have died that way. I wish I could have helped, you know?
Yeah.
But I understand why they didn't feel empowered to talk about it. And like, I was saying last night, let's not think about that. Let's focus on stopping the forthcoming ones, because they're going to happen. And if we want to because the numbers are going up, right? Everything I've read is the numbers have gone up and up, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And
So if we want them to come down, we need to be more open to having that conversation.
you know, so I do a talk called an awkward conversation will not kill you. And it's really about having those blunt conversations. But I mean, the thing is, if we're at the point where like you can have an awkward conversation, or you can be crying at their funeral, and it's as dire as that. You can't beat yourself up for not having stopped it, not having known, and because that is a thing that cannot be undone. And guilt, I've heard this. Guilt is a useless emotion. is you know it. It's about preventing the future kind of stuff. And you can go to somebody, as awkward as it is, you have to normalize saying to somebody, are you going to hurt yourself? Are you, I mean, they taught us with a crisis text line part of, you do 30 some hours of training and testing and all this stuff. And they teach you, there's this method, you have to ask people, are you thinking about, you know, hurting yourself? Are you thinking about killing yourself? Have you thought about how you would do it? Do you have those things nearby? You escalate up, and do you have a time frame? And if it's all of those things, then you have to take more active measures, because otherwise you're just trying to sort of walk it back, you know, and think like, how do we keep them from getting to the next thing? But it made me realize, like, I've just super blunt been with friends who I feel I'm worried about, like, are you thinking about killing yourself? Are you thinking about hurting yourself?
Yeah.
And that's awkward to say it, but it shocks you out of this thought loop. And so I'm like, oh my God, wait, that's real that I was thinking that thing.
Yeah, no, that's powerful. I think, you know, that's a hard conversation, but that's really an honest way to approach it.
Yeah, it's not fun.
No.
And people think there's this sort of notion out there that the more people like talk about suicide, it triggers it. That's actually, research has shown that that's not the case.
Right. You're not going to give someone an idea they haven't already had by talking about it, you know?
Yeah.
And like, I don't know if these things are solvable, but I just think that at the least we have to approach it with compassion and openness, you know?
Yeah.
And honestly, you know, if we want to prevent more of that.
Yeah. And if we want to, you know, and it starts with ourselves and being kind and waking up, and maybe you did have a day that's a 1 on your scale or something, but, you know, make it through to that next day.
Yeah.
And because you have a chance to reset your mise en place in the morning.
Exactly.
That's the beautiful thing about mise en place. It happens every day,
Every
or even
day.
every shift if you need it to.
So I look forward to doing this now. Like it was a chore at first.
Yeah.
And like I said, it was difficult to be honest, but I use codes. So in case someone found it, like I wouldn't be embarrassed, because there can't be any shame or embarrassment. It's got to be very honest data.
Yeah.
So I know the code in my head. I don't need to write it down. And then I can record all this information, you know, thoroughly. But what I find now is that writing this out, I do it in the morning, so when I get up. So I reflect, I start out my morning, and I reflect on the night before and write it all down. I'll write my intentions that day. But it's therapeutic to do it.
Yeah.
So every morning I look forward to it. Like I used to think it was a chore. Now it's like, like this morning I didn't get to do it. I was rushing around this morning, trying to get from point A to point B. And I didn't get to do it. So I felt like a little bit like, my mise en place is already a little bit off.
Yeah.
You know?
But I hope you allow yourself the time during this day to sit down and like have a quiet moment and do that.
And I don't beat myself up about it, because I'll get to it at some point. Like it's not like it doesn't pile up because I keep up with it.
Yeah. And if you did, then it's okay to
if I miss days, that's fine. That's fine, you know. And, carrying this thing around me, and it gets thicker and thicker every day. It is a little bit unwieldy. So I think
I just started carrying a binder. Like I'm trying to like get started working on a new book, and it has a lot to do with like a lot of this kind of stuff. But I know I was serious about it when I bought the binder.
Yeah.
Got a binder, some folders, a notebook in there.
Yeah, that's the start, right?
Yeah.
Like you started the process when you start doing those things and make it sort of concrete.
Yeah, and it's a black binder. I'm going to put like stickers on it and stuff, and really like make it mine. But stickers makes me think. Actually, I want to ask you. So, tell me about your band. Do you still make music? Because I always think like punk rock stickers.
Yeah, yeah.
So, tell me about what was. Do you still make music, and what was the band you were touring with?
Oh, sure, yeah. So that's a great timing for this question because things have changed recently. So in the early 2000s, well, I've been in bands since I was like 15, but in the early 2000s, I was in a band called the Kingsbury Manx. And we released like 5 albums on various record labels, and we toured with all sorts of bands.
What kind of music was it?
Sort of like if you took like the Beach Boys and Simon and Garfunkel and put them together with like more of a contemporary thing, like very like finger picking guitar and vocal harmonies and the psychedelic keyboards and that sort of stuff, like really pretty music. So we did that for years, and we toured. I ended up moving that was in Chapel Hill, North Carolina.
Oh, yeah. Okay. My husband went there. He's from nearby.
Oh, cool.
And, so many great bands. Did you ever play Cat's Cradle?
Of course.
Yeah. I love Bill Smith. And that's so many good bands come out of there. And, I think it's so fun that like Mac from Superchunk is married to like, truly great chef Andrea Rusing. And just, that is such a crucible for great music.
I worked at Lantern, Andrea's restaurant, as a bartender.
Oh, she's so special.
That was like the first like real bartending job I'd had, where I was like, a really busy James Beard Award-winning restaurant, and making like craft cocktails for the first time, not just like one-on-ones. And I also worked at Merge, Mac's record label.
You did? So the world is so tiny. So I actually met Andrea years and years before I was a food journalist, but I really cared about food. And I was with a food journalist friend of mine, and we went out to lunch. And somehow we talked, we bonded, and then like re-met years later. But I knew I loved all the Merge stuff.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
So, it was like the world is very, very tiny.
See, that's like my world's like food and beverage and music has always been like I've always had a foot in both worlds. So anyway, when I moved to Austin, and I have 2 children, I have a 7-year-old daughter, Audrey, and a 4-year-old son, Oliver. I miss him very much.
You name very well. Audrey and Oliver are great names.
My wife takes a lot of credit for that, but or shouldn't take the credit for that. But when I moved to Austin about 6 years ago, and I started bartending at Garage, I kind of made a decision like the music chapter of my life is over. I'm committing to being a career professional bartender, and I kind of like sold all my music gear. And I didn't really know a lot of people in Austin. The Golden Boys, a great band in Austin, and they were always like, "Hey, come play with us." But I was like, that chapter of my life is over. Now I'm focused fully on hospitality and honing my craft, which I did. And then only recently I started playing music again. Damon Bolte, who's in a band called Brothers and owns bars and bartends. And I was like, he's like, "Do you still play music, dude?" And I was like, "No, man, I had to give it up when I focused on this." He's like, "Why?"
Yeah.
And I was like, good point. So recently, one of my old bandmates from Kingsbury Manx started a new band called Open Field. And I was visiting Chapel Hill for vacation a couple weeks ago. And they booked a show. And they were like, "Come play with us." I ended up playing a whole show with them.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And I hadn't touched an instrument or played in front of an audience in like 7 years.
What did you play?
For most of the show, I played keyboards, but I did one song on guitar and sang a song at the end.
That's awesome.
Because it was my wife and mine's anniversary right then, so I sang like a little like romantic song to her.
Oh yeah, so so you got to play a show.
Yeah, and so I'm in that band again. So
that's so exciting.
So they play every week on Wednesdays.
And remind me what they're called?
Open Field.
Open Field.
And I did one record with them right before I moved to Austin. We recorded in Asheville, North Carolina, beautiful place. And then they recorded another record without me. And now they're playing live, and I'm just going to play them as much as I can,
Oh, that's so good.
And I feel like balance is restored to my life a little bit.
Yeah.
Because it's true. Like, you can have it all. Like, you shouldn't try to, like... I mean, you can do whatever you want to do, but for me, my balance needs to be, like, yes, I'm a food and beverage professional, and that's, like, a big passion of mine. That doesn't mean I have to give up music. That can also be a passion of mine.
I love that. So I have a few questions I ask everybody.
Of course. Yeah.
All right. One is... our Oprah moment, because I believe saying things out to the universe so people listening somehow can help you with this to really manifest something. You're taking care of your customers, you're taking care of your family, all this stuff. What is the thing that you want for you? The selfish thing you want for you? tough one.
More time with my family, honestly.
Yeah.
That is when I feel the best, you know. It's like when I'm just those quiet days, like hanging out with the kids and my wife, and not even like doing anything per se, but just not having like always the rush in modern life, you know. I really enjoy those quiet moments, and I just want more of them, you know.
Yeah. World, universe, please let him have this. Have you ever cried in the walk-in?
Not necessarily the walk-in per se, but I've had my cry in the walk-in moments, sure.
Yeah. I think people don't realize how much emotional stuff happens in
Yeah.
the walk-in.
Yeah.
You know, whether it's like punching, bag
No,
of
yeah,
something
yeah.
or
I've probably taken out more anger in the past in walk-ins.
yeah.
Go like years ago, that'd be more my thing. Just go in there and kind of scream, but
Yeah.
maybe punch a bag of meat or something. But sure, I've definitely more recently, as I'm more in touch with my inner self, I probably more of those cry and walk in moments.
Yeah.
Sure.
So what is your comfort food?
Vegan sloppy joe.
Oh, is there somewhere do you make them? Is there somewhere you get them?
My wife makes it. It's really good. Yeah.
Are you vegan?
I'm vegetarian.
Okay.
But I really appreciate vegan food too.
Yeah. Oh, and it seems like Austin, there's probably a lot of opportunity for vegetarian, vegan stuff.
Absolutely. I was telling one of my staff the other day about how like when I started as vegetarian, it was like almost impossible.
Yeah.
And now it's so easy. And I also want to talk about why I'm vegetarian.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, because I have compassion for animals and believe them to be sentient. But that's my own thing. I don't have any, obviously I work in food and beverage, so I have a lot of respect for culinary traditions, and I totally respect people eating food. But the real reason that I'm vegetarian is to try to provide balance. We consume too much meat and too much beef as a civilization, and my part in that is to try to be one that will take one for the team and not do that.
Yeah.
And then hopefully that will spread so that we can eat meat. We should eat meat. I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with it, but let's try to get back to a balance where it's not destroying our planet to eat meat.
I think that's really responsible and sane. That's really good. What is the last meal that you had that made you emotional?
So I've been traveling a lot. And so it's been tricky, like having like home time and stuff like that. So a few weeks ago in between trips, I had like my first like home dinner with my wife and my kids, and my wife made this wonderful dinner. And I just got kind of choked up and like tearful about it, because I was like, it just felt so much gratitude.
Yeah.
Because like when you cook for somebody, you're putting so much love into that, and I appreciate that. And so when I go to a restaurant and get that, I appreciate that. But it's even like better when it's someone you care about and you're just sitting there with your family and enjoying a nice, wonderful meal. And like, yeah, I got like kind of like choked up.
I love that. What's the last meal that somebody cooked for you in their home?
Like someone else's home.
Yeah. No, people don't cook for people in restaurants. They're always nervous.
When I visited New York a couple years ago, my friend Greg, who's a really good, like he doesn't work in industry anymore. He was a chef for a while. He made me a really delicious like Indian food, like curry and stuff like that. And it was just like, dang, like it's like restaurant level food in his little tiny New York apartment. It was awesome.
That's so nice. This question, because you're a music person, might be a little tough. What living musician would you want to like cook or make a drink for, and what would you make for them?
Wow.
And it can't be somebody you've already done this for.
Yeah.
And I know that you live in such a music town.
Yeah. That's funny. I would like to make a really good cocktail for Simon Le Bon from Duran Duran.
I love him. Oh my gosh. And I saw them perform like in the last couple of years, and he's still on it. He looks amazing.
Yeah.
They were playing with Nile Rodgers. And
Awesome.
It was such a great set.
If I can make a cocktail for Simon from Duran Duran, because I don't know much about him, but I just have this idea he probably just knows he has such exquisite taste and everything, and has eaten and drank the best everywhere, right? So if I could make him a cocktail and put it in front of him, and he was like, "That's delicious, mate," like I would just like go crazy.
Dear Simon Le Bon, please make your way to Garage.
Please come to Austin. I'll make you a delicious cocktail.
Come through for something. Oh, I hope this.
I actually emailed his website one time, and because like ask Simon questions, and I sent an email like, Simon, what is your favorite wine? Please name varietal. What is your favorite cocktail? What's your favorite? Like,
wow.
And the response was just like, it was like, this is like too personal or something like that.
Oh my God. I wonder, is he sober? Maybe
I don't know.
I don't know, but like, I think that's great. I hope you get to do that.
I probably should research that before I ask him to come in and let me make a drink for him.
Yeah, and what, like,
I can make an NA drink too, though.
yeah, I love that.
I like spirit-free cocktails as well.
Yeah. Last question. You have 5 uninterrupted minutes for self-care. You're everything's taken care of, and you're just by yourself. What is the thing that you do?
Read. I love to read. When I have time, I like to read every single day, all sorts of different things. But when I'm able to just sort of have time to myself and all the dishes are done, and the laundry's done, and the kids are in bed, and work's taken care of, and I just like to, if I have that time to just read as much as I want without fear of like being late for something, like that's a wonderful feeling.
Is there a book you're reading right now?
Yes, I've been really into Octavia Butler.
Oh, yeah.
She's such a fantastic author. It's definitely science fiction, but I love science fiction. It's a great genre. But she brings levels of philosophy and understanding of civilization to it that's just incredible, and very like ahead of her time, because like some of her books, she describes conditions in them where it's dystopia future. It's like, oh yeah, that's just today.
Happening right now.
That's happening right now. There's literally one book where she talks about how after the end of civilization, the leader of the what was the United States, his slogan is "Make America Great Again." And that was written in like the 80s.
Wow. So I think I know what I will be reading next.
So I'm currently reading her Lilith's Brood trilogy, which is just fantastic. It's a mind blower. That's
really cool. And tell me who in the Marvel Cinematic Universe is your spirit hero?
Oh,
I thought that was the last question. I forgot to ask you that one.
I kind of like the Hulk character. I mean,
you're not the first person.
He's not like my favorite, like visually or anything, but I really like about him that like he's just holding in all this like anguish and fear, and I think it's like very like appropriate to like the condition of modern human. It's like we're just containing all the stress and anxiety and emotion side of us. Sometimes it just breaks free,
Oh my gosh! I really hope that. I don't know, that you're able to get that more time with your family and take care of yourself. And I can't thank you enough for your time today.
Thank you for having me here. It's been wonderful.
Oh my gosh. So Paul Finn, where can people find you?
I'm in Austin, Texas at Garage Bar most nights. So we're at Commodore Restaurant right next door, downtown Austin.
And on social media?
On social media, I have an Instagram handle. It's PF_Finn, PF_FINN. And that's my main source of reaching me. I'll eventually have a website for Personal Needs and Plus, but that's still forthcoming.
Oh my gosh, I can't wait till you do that. I will help you shout it to the rooftops. Yeah. So thank you so much to you. Thank you to our producer, Jennifer Martnick. Thank you to Douglas Wagner for our delightful theme song. We're on all the places you can get podcasts. We're on YouTube. You can find us on foodandwine.com. But if you're at a place where you can leave a review, those stars, those comments and stuff, they really, really help, because they help us rise up in people can see us and we can keep doing this podcast. And I want to keep doing it. So I really appreciate it if you could do it, or tell a friend to sign up for it, subscribe. If there's somebody you would like for us to talk to, or something you would like for us to cover, I'm easy to find. I am at Kitten with a Whip. This is all part of Food and Wine Pro, which, go to foodandwine.com and find out more about Pro. We have a fantastic newsletter that always has the latest podcasts in it, some life advice, some stuff about the industry, the latest news. It's a good thing, and you should sign up for it. Thank you for being with us, and take great care of yourself until the next time.